Here we go.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Rudy Sarzo.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. You're live on the air. Welcome to Totally Driven Radio.
Right. Great to be live.
It's great to be live. And I got to tell you, I'm so nervous about this.
Well, you've done this before, right? This is not your first show, right?
No. We've been doing this for a while now. But as I was saying before we called you, like, you know, going back, I'm like, put it this way: I've been waiting 30 years to talk to you. And when I met you back at the convention, the Show or Theater convention, a couple months ago in Jersey, like even then, like I didn't know really what to say. It's like, wow, like what can you say after 30 years in a few minutes, you know, talking with you? It's like, what do you say?
Well, you can always say you look great for your age.
I'll tell you what, you look better than I do. You know, you look better for your age than I do for my age. How about that?
You know, I think it's enough just to say that I look good for my age. That's all.
Yeah, and you know what else? Too? Like, whenever I would mention your name, I'm like, oh yeah, like people we've had in the last few weeks as guests, and you talk about with musical guests, and you bring up Randy Rhoads, and you say, I'm like, oh yeah, well Rudy Sarzo is going to be on in a few weeks, and they all say the same exact thing. As soon as you mention Rudy Sarzo's name, he's the nicest guy in the music business.
Yeah. You know, I'm getting tired of hearing that, so I'm going to start being rude.
Uh-oh.
I think tonight is it. This is it.
Uh-oh. Yeah, figures it's going to start with me, right? All right, well.
You have to start somewhere.
let me. I got a bunch of questions, and the one thing, I got to ask you if you can do this for me. Can you pronounce your full name?
Oh my God. Okay, here we go. Rodolfo Maximiliano Sarzo Valle Grande Ruiz Pérez Simón. How long is your show? Because I got a few more names to go.
We got plenty of time. Like,
that's it. Yeah, I think that covers all my ancestors dating back to the Vikings.
I was telling that to my wife last night, and believe me, I got nowhere near correct in the pronunciation. But I was saying to her, like, I guess thankfully, like, he didn't like decide to become like a football player or something. Like, they'd never fit that name on a jersey.
You know what? That was going to be my email address. Then I figured that nobody was going to respond to me with that if they had to type all of that in. You know.
yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it here. All right, so we'll start with the simple questions first. And what made you start getting into music and playing bass, and why did you choose like bass over guitar?
Well, bass, I figured was the easiest thing to play, 4 strings, and chicks dug Paul McCartney.
Well, there you go.
That's it. Yeah, listen, come on. You know, when you're a kid, you have no clue what's going on. You just know it feels good to do it, chicks dig it, and you're playing Beatles songs, and you're playing, 1-4-5 progression songs. Then, fortunately, what happened in the 60s is very quickly, music changed. And I'm talking about music. I'm not talking about, technology. Because right now, there's a lot of music being created, good music, but nevertheless, it relies a lot on technology. So you have to be a little bit techno and a little bit of musician. Back in the day, you have to be 100% musician. No technology involved. So music progressed. The Beatles came out with Sgt. Pepper, and then they, more progressive songs such as I Am the Walrus, which opened up the gates for progressive rock, which I really got heavily into. And then from there, you got fusion. And put it this way, you have to be able to play. You have to also make a decision. Okay, is this going to be my hobby, or is this going to be what I want to do for the rest of my life? So first, of course, it always starts out And listen, a few months ago at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, I asked Jack Bruce a similar question. Jack Bruce, the bass player from Cream, who was one of my heroes, who still is. I asked him the question: how do you go from being a classically trained cellist to becoming, one of the most significant bass players of the generation? And he said, flat out, you cannot pull chicks with a cello. That was it. It's basically the same, it's the same reason. This is what we did. First, we wanted to, become significant to women, and then after that, you realize that you become a musician, and, you still want to be significant to women. I mean, I've been married for almost 30 years now, so I want to be significant to my wife, so I want to play good so she thinks, so she keeps me.
Which you might probably be one of, there's not many of you guys out there in the musical business like yourself for as long as you've been doing it for over 30 years and still be married. I mean, that's a feat in itself.
Yeah, we met during the 1981 Blizzard of Oz tour in Los Angeles, at home, here in LA. And she's been with me through every ups and downs and sideways of my music career. She's always been incredibly supportive. Never got involved in it. She might have told me a couple good advice, couple of things here and there, but outside of that, she's never, she just left it up to me, to make decisions, career decisions.
That's cool.
Which most of the time, what happens is you start making career decisions not based on you, but based on your family.
Right.
What's the best for your family? Not necessarily because I make certain decisions that, as a matter of fact, a lot of them I turned down the original request to join certain bands. And I get the second time around, they ask me again, and then I go for it. And of course, the success that I've had with such bands, you can never foretell that that those bands are going to be great. You just know that you're going to be playing with great musicians, great songs, great people, and you're going to have a great time doing it.
Right.
That's about it. That's what you can go for. What the future holds for the success of any band, nobody really knows. There's no guarantees.
Now, you've been in multiple bands throughout the years, been very successful in the bands you've joined. These are kind of almost like get not, I guess, maybe annoying, but where it seems like you can never actually focus on something like you yourself would do, like your own project. You had the one where it was you and Tommy Aldridge in between. Was it Ozzy and Whitesnake, I guess, or Quiet Riot and Whitesnake? And it's like all of a sudden, it's like you were doing that, and it's like all of a sudden, then you're pulled back out, and you're doing the Whitesnake thing. So it's like you can never really get your.
Which is fine because we spent like a couple of years, Tommy and I, with a different configurations of a certain band that we were doing. We struggled for a couple of years. The hardest thing to find is really a singer, a great world-class quality singer. That's the hardest thing to find. So I can put it into a nutshell. I have worked harder at my failures than I've done at my successes. Success comes really easy. You know what I mean? It's like when something is right, when all the fundamental elements that make up a successful group, when they're all included, when all the ingredients are together, it has a life of its own. Now, you can bang your head against the wall forever and not get anything accomplished if you don't have the right ingredients. Right. And one of them, major ingredients, having the right singer.
Yeah, I guess. So I guess you figure that's the biggest number one ingredient to the band is that singer.
Yeah, absolutely. Always. It will always be. Yes, you got to have the right singer because the singer is your connection, your cosmic connection with the audience. It's the guy who sells. It's it's like this. It's down to marketing. You can have the greatest product in the world, but if you don't have the right marketing team selling it, nobody's gonna know about it, and nobody's gonna hear about it, and it's not gonna get sold. Comes down to that. The singer is the salesman of the group.
Now,
that's it.
Now, talking to you like this right now, where you're explaining stuff like that, is this kind of like when you do like the rock and roll fantasy camps? Is that, do you guys sit and talk about stuff like this in these camps?
Well, only when we're asked. You know, I mean, the things that we share from our experience with the campers are all based on a per need basis. Like, for example, this conversation we're having right now, I rarely ever have it because people don't ask me these questions. They just happen to ask me these questions, and so I answer them the best of my capability and from experience. But not everybody asks me these type of questions, you know. And so at the camp it's the same thing. You know, you go there, and basically my mission at the camp is to help the campers, because a lot of them that attend were at one time in their lives they were pursuing a music career, and then they were attending college, and they graduate from college, and then all of a sudden they don't have the time to devote to their bands anymore, and they go on to be successful doctors, lawyers, whatever, you know, professionals. And then 20 years later, they rediscover that guitar that's been sitting in the closet, and they want to pick it up and get that feeling of being in a band. So that's what the camp is about. So, but somehow they have disconnected themselves with the musician identity, and it's my responsibility, it's my mission to help them by the end of the camp. Help them re-identify themselves as musicians, because I always tell them, look, you don't have to make a living out of being a musician to identify yourself as a musician. Music is music. It's an art. It's about, you know, one of the greatest things you can feel. You know, you can make love, you can make music, you know, you can do good things in life, you know, go out and, rescue a puppy, you know, stuff like that. It's about this, you know, it's basically, you know, all those really good things about it, you know.
Now, when you were growing up, when you were younger, before you actually got into Quiet Riot with Randy and Kevin and all, your brother Robert is a guitar player who we got to know from back in the day with Hurricane, and now you're playing with him in Queensryche.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever have any bands together when you were younger?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, yes. As a matter of fact, when I joined the Randy Rhoads version of Quiet Riot, I already had under my belt about 10 years playing clubs. I was in my mid-20s. Maybe I was 26, 27. I was about 27. So I already been playing a lot in clubs. You know, I've played the whole Miami circuit of nightclubs, which run the gamut of top 40 bands. You know, I mean, there's not a whole lot of top 40 bands anymore, because really top 40, there's no rock music in top 40, so it's hard to get up there and, you know, and play, be in a rock band and play top 40. So bands usually just do tribute, you know, to whoever, you know. And back in the day, where, you know, the radio was filled with top 40 hits, we played anything. We played anything from disco to country to hard rock, you know, like Deep Purple and whatever, blues, you know, whatever was on the radio. You know, we played that. And so I had to really, that was my schooling. You know, that's where I learned all the techniques, you know, from slapping and thumping to playing, you know, metal, you know, like Deep Purple or Rainbow songs, whatever, you know, in clubs, you know. So by the time I joined Quiet Riot, I wasn't a kid anymore. And definitely as far as my, you know, my music background, I was not, you know, I was not an amateur. I was already, you know, somebody who had been making a living out of playing music, you know, in clubs. Now, when I moved to LA, it was almost impossible to make a living out of playing music, because if you want to concentrate on an original band like Quiet Riot was, you know, with Randy Rhoads, you had to play, you know, places like the Starwood and the Whiskey and so on the Strip, you know, that Hollywood area. And the pay was very poor, so you could definitely not make a living out of playing there. And also, we only play like maybe 2 weekends a month. And the rest we just spent rehearsing, which meant that whatever money we made playing at the Starwood or the Whiskey went back to our rehearsal budget or demo budget, because we were making a lot of demos, you know, trying to get a record deal. You know, so Randy was the teacher. Kevin was doing some other jobs. I was working at a fast food, health food place called McNaturals, and I was also teaching at Misonia. We were trying to make ends meet, but we were not really making a living out of it. But it was, I could have stayed in Miami, made a decent living, gone nowhere, but I just took a chance and I came to LA, and I just gave it my best shot.
So when you joined Quiet Riot, then you were actually more like the mature adult, because they were still fresh out of teens or early 20s when you joined them.
Yeah, well, you imagine Randy must have been about 22, 23 when I played with him in Quiet Riot, because when he passed away in '83, he was 26.
25.
Yeah. No, actually, in '82, he passed away in '82. He was 26 years old. So. They were in their early teens. I think I was like 5 years older than any one of them was. Yeah. So,
now, what were your impressions of Quiet Riot as a band?
You know what? It wasn't really because I was 5 years older. It's just that I had come from a city where there was a nightclub circuit. Like Miami, North Miami, Fort Lauderdale, a lot of clubs. In LA, there were more showcase rooms where people play original material. There was more showcasing for the music industry. We didn't have that in Miami. All the showcasing was done either in New York or LA. So the reason why to play in LA was to get a record deal. The reason why to play in Miami was just to make a living.
Right.
That was it. So I did make a living, but I wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted to be in a rock band, And also disco came in like in the mid '70s, and that kind of like wiped out all the rock that was being played on those clubs. So I just followed and I went up to upstate New York, and the winters were very hard to survive for a starting musician. So eventually I wound up in LA.
Now, what was your initial feelings when you first would see Quiet Riot out in the clubs before you joined them, and your thoughts on Randy?
Actually, I saw them once. I described the whole experience in my book. I have a book called Off the Rails. I don't know if any of you guys are aware of that, but it answers the one question that I get asked the most when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoads? And so it took me about 300-some pages to explain it. So it's only there. So basically, I actually got to see Quiet Riot one time before I joined the band. I happened to walk into the Starwood, and they were playing, and I was really impressed. And I ran into Kevin when they got off the stage, and I told him, because I always like to tell people when I get it, when I think they're onto something on the right track, just like anybody else, you say, hey man, really love what you're doing, and I think you guys are into something really unique here. That was basically it. Then I left town. I went to New Jersey to play with my brother in some lounges, club bands, like Holiday Inn circuit, just to get some money so I could go back to LA again, because I needed to go, to make some money. I couldn't make that money playing in LA, so I went to New Jersey. And then by the time that I was actually getting ready to move back to LA, that's when I got the call to come into audition for the Randy Rhoads version of Quiet Riot. And I told Kevin, hey, I'll be there in a week. So I rang him up, and when I arrived and auditioned, got the gig, and became a member of that version of Quiet Riot.
That's awesome. Now, when in that version of Quiet Riot, I mean, the big story was how you guys were always trying to get the record deal, and the fan support you guys had. I mean, how discouraging was that for you? Always trying to get that record deal. And as a matter of fact, we had your old friend on earlier this year, Ron Sobel, talking about the documentary he did. And I think you were in the documentary even saying, like, it was like you guys were chasing your tail. Like, the record company would say to you, be more disco. And then you guys would, like, go crazy, write a disco song, record it, and then you would present it to the record company. They'd be like, we'll try this style of music now.
Yeah, I mean, to be specific, we will go to have a meeting with another guy at a record company. He'll pull out Billboard magazine and point to a Rod Stewart, do you think I'm sexy, on the charts, and say, hey, you guys come up with a song like this, We can talk. So we will go back and cut a demo of One in a Million. That was our tribute to Do You Think I'm Sexy? And by the time we went back to play that song for the A&R guy, Do You Think I'm Sexy? It's off the charts. So he goes, you got something else more like this other song. So we were just chasing ourselves, you know. But we were not the only ones. Everybody else in town was, you know.
Now, when you look back at that original version of Quiet Riot, what's your feelings about the music itself? Do you think it could have been big, or do you think you were just left behind?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, that version of Quiet Riot musically, direction-wise, was actually a bit different, not as hard, not as heavy as the Mental Health version of the band. The Mental Health version of the band was more in tune with what was going on in England and Europe at the time, even though record companies were not in L.A., they were not acknowledging it. They were not really paying attention to bands like even Ozzy, you know, when I'm talking about in 1981, you know, when Ozzy came out with Blizzard and then, you know, Diary of a Madman. Yeah. You know, and you have bands like Saxon, Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, you know, Motorhead. That was the new wave of British, you know, metal coming in. That was bubbling. That was like really big already in England and Europe. Whereas, so Quiet Riot had more to do with that movement than it did with the Randy Rhoads version. We had to do more with bands like Martha Hoople and Queen, more of the glam rock, you know, which if you look at what happened was in the 70s, you had glam rock, and then punk came in, new wave came in, and then the British metal came in, and then the Sunset Strip version of metal, which is, you know, Quiet Riot, and then Motley Crue and Rad and Dokken and Great White and everybody else that came after that, you
know. Now, what was your feelings when Randy got the gig with Ozzy? Were you upset or?
Oh no, I explained this in the book. I mean, everybody wanted to get an audition with Ozzy. You know, by then, you know, I have pretty much written off Quiet Riot, not because of anything having to do with the band, but just having to do with the music industry itself. The music industry had written off not only Quiet Riot, but every other band that played our genre of music. They were only interested in bands like Devo and the Knack and, you know, new wave or punk, you know, stuff like that. Right. Yeah.
Now, how about the first time you heard Blizzard of Oz? What were your feelings like? The difference between what Randy was doing there?
Yeah. Well, Randy brought me a rough mix of the album. He played it for me before the album was released, you know, and I thought it was unbelievable, you know. But then again, it sounded like a 70s record. The 80s had not been invented yet. If you listen to Blizzard and then right after that listen to Diary, it's a whole different sounding band, you know. Even though those two records were recorded back to back within months of each other. It's just that there was such a musical growth and a different mix that reflected more things that were to come, you know, in the 80s, more of that arena rock sound, you know.
Right.
Pretty amazing giant step leap from one record to the other, you know. So no, I was blown away, but I was blown away because I was listening to the growth of Randy's musical skills, because finally he was in a place where he could actually showcase his musical ability, whereas because, you know, Ozzy told him, listen, just do what you do, be the best that you can, and just go for it, rather than to be in a situation like Quiet Riot that we were just trying to please whatever taste of the record companies locally. But what really blew me away was listening to Diary, because, you know, here we were doing Blizzard, which was very much a 70s sounding record, the way it was recorded and so on. Then when I heard Diary, it was like something I had never heard before. It was like, wow, this is more ambient. This is bigger sounding. This actually, I thought this sounds like what we sound like live. even though it was not the same band, because Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley, of course, everybody knows, they recorded those 2 records. But
right.
as a band, when we got up on stage, that was the live sound that we were actually getting, So, it blew me away because not too many records, or I can't even recall a record in 1980. Remember, I heard that record in 1981.
Right.
Not 82. In 81, I had not heard a record that ambient sounding like that. Maybe Van Halen. That was about it. But every metal record was very 70s sounding, But when the Diary of a Madman came out, and then listening to Randy playing, the Diary of a Madman itself, it was like progressive rock meets metal, and I'm going,
yeah,
oh my God, this is unbelievable. Just the leap. There was nothing like that in Blizzard. You have Revolution Mother Earth and stuff like that, but nothing like Diary of a Madman, with all these different time signatures and all of that going on. That was like amazing stuff. And there was only like a few months in between those 2 records, So, but listen, I want to wish all your listeners and you a blessed Christmas and Happy New Year, and hopefully we can do a part 2 of this interview sometime next year.
Yeah, I would love to, because honestly, I got like 3 pages of questions.
Okay. Well, let's do them a bit of a time.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Let's get back together after the holidays, and Rudy, I want to thank you so much, and
thank you
like
so
I said,
much
there's
for
so much
having
more.
me. Well, thank you
real
so
quick
much for having me on the show. And yeah.
I just want to say, can you cut an ID for me before I let you go?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. It was a bit of a.
Can you cut a quick ID for me before I let you go?
Oh, sure, of course.
This is Rudy Sarzo, and you're listening to Totally Driven Radio.
Hey, headbangers, this is Rudy Sarzo, and you're listening to Totally Driven Radio.
Awesome, Rudy. Thanks so much again. And do you have anything coming up, or?
Well, touring with Queensryche and the beginning of the year and bunch of stuff. So yeah, get back to me in a few months, and then we'll continue this and catch up with whatever I'm doing at that time.
Sounds good. All right, Rudy.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Merry Christmas. God bless.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas. See ya.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. There he is, the legend himself, Mr. Rudy Sarzo. Wow, that was awesome, huh?
Dude, you're a beast when it comes to these interviews. You're like that era of just like rock, metal. That's your TV right there.
Dude, you know what? That's like when I was in high school at that time. That whole era, in the 80s or whatever. Like my, like junior high and high school, and I used to read every magazine. I used to buy 2 copies of every magazine that came out. Of Circus, of Hit Parader, Rip Magazine, Rock Scene, whatever magazine came out, Cream, I would buy 2 copies of every magazine, and I would read one cover to cover, and the other one I would cut up and tape all over my walls.
Wow.
And I had them magazines saved for years, and I would go back and reference them and read them. I mean, it was like I was a human encyclopedia of that era of music. So now, like, when I do these interviews, like, stuff flashes back in my mind, and it's scary because in this, we only got up to, in this interview, honestly, 1980. We didn't even get into the heyday. You know what I mean? So at this rate, we're going to need like a 5-part interview with Rudy Sarzo.
Right.